So let me welcome you to the Grant Proposal Presentation 101 with NASA Scope. With me here today are all of your guides. So Chelsea and I have been guiding you along the way, but we'd also like to introduce you to two other very important and key members to our team. I'm going to start over with Dave. Dave, give everyone a quick wave. So Dave Williams. Dave is a research professor here in the School of Earth and Space Exploration at Arizona State University. He's a director of the Ron Greeley Center for Planetary Studies, the NASA Regional Planetary Information Facility at ASU. He is also the director of the NASA Planetary Aeolian Laboratory at the Ames Research Center in California. Dr. Williams is currently performing research in volcanology and planetary geology with a focus of planetary mapping, geochemical, and remote sensing studies. And Dave serves as the deputy PI for the NASA Scope project. Also with us today and our key speaker is Minnie Wadhwa. So Minnie is the planetary scientist and educator interested in timescales and processes involved in the formation and evolution of solar system and the planets. At ASU, she served as the director for Center for Meteorite Studies from 2006 till 2019. And in July of 2019, she was appointed the director of the School of Earth and Space Exploration here at ASU. Most recently, she has also been selected as the principal scientist for the Mars Sample Return mission. She is incredibly busy because she also serves as the PI for the NASA Scope project. And so today she is going to walk you through Proposal Preparation 101. If you have any questions, please drop them into chat or you can reserve them at the conclusion of the presentation, and we will all be very happy to address those questions. With that, Minnie, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jess. And just to introduce Jess, actually, Jess Swan is the deputy PI also of Scope. And she is basically working with Dave to help connect subject matter experts in the NASA community with the science activation teams that we have. And I'm going to tell you a little bit, of course, about the science activation teams and how we're basically how the seed grant opportunity is being used as a vehicle to do that work. So I'm going to give that presentation. If we could have the first slide there, Chelsea, that would be great. And so great to see everybody here and really excited to have a lot of interest in this particular opportunity. It's funding for you to be able to do some things that you're really excited and passionate about, and help spread some of the excitement and inspiration from NASA research and NASA missions out to the broader audience of learners out there. So let's get going with this presentation. Just an outline here. I'm going to talk a little bit about what our mission and reach is for the SCOPE project, as well as more broadly for the Science Activation Program that NASA has. And I'll then talk about the SCOPE seed grant opportunity in particular. I'll talk a little bit about the different parts of the proposal that we need to pay attention to, a little bit about the funding model, and just a few tips. I'm going to be here with you for the first half an hour at least, and we'll hopefully finish up early enough so that you can ask me some questions. And then Chelsea and Dave will hang around for a while longer to be able to answer any other questions that you might have. And of course, I mean, anytime you have any other questions, you can always reach out to us by email, and we'd be happy to address those. So next slide. Can you have the next slide, Chelsea? There we go. Next slide. So the Science Activation Program in the Science Mission Directorate at NASA is basically a network of something like 43 competitively selected teams that are across the United States. And the link here actually gives a listing of all of those teams and what they do and who the members are. So the goal of the Science Activation Program at NASA is basically to connect the infrastructure projects, and there's a listing of the infrastructure projects that are also, they're listed on this link if you go to it, and the community partners. So we want to link those to NASA science experts, and basically to link learners with these experts with real content and with experiences so that we can actually activate minds and promote a deeper understanding of our world and beyond using NASA research and NASA missions as the content and inspiration. So as I mentioned, there are 43 science activation teams, and the reach is really impressive and substantial. So if you want to get, learners more broadly excited about the kinds of things that you're working on, there's something like 22 million learner interactions per year that are facilitated by these science activation teams. And these teams are located in 55 states and territories. And so, or actually not located in these, but actually the reach extends to all states and territories in the United States and across the world, really. So next slide. So what about SCOPE? So SCOPE is one of these 43 science activation teams, and our particular goal is to help connect NASA subject matter experts, people like yourself, with the science activation teams that are made up of educators as well as communicators. And these are professionals that are education professionals and communications professionals. And we want to help connect you with them so that you can get your science and your exciting work out to the broader public and inspire the broader public. And so that's the goal for SCOPE. And the main driver for the SEED grant project is to really help you do that. So essentially to reduce the barriers for the engagement of individuals like yourself, so that you can actually connect with science activation projects. And essentially doing that through targeted funding for collaborative projects. And we're especially trying to engage with early career subject matter experts. And I know many of you here that are joining us are early career subject matter experts. I'm really, really great. It's great to see that. And certainly also those representing historically marginalized communities. So we really want to try to broaden the participation of subject matter experts to people that typically we would not see represented. And so I'm really, super excited that you're here and want to learn about this opportunity. And so the funding levels that we're going to be talking about will be on order of, between $5,000 to $20,000 a year. And we will entertain multi-year projects, but the application that you make, it will be for a single year, and we would consider a renewal through another proposal at the end of the year-long project that you would do. The notice of intent is requested from you if you're interested in applying for one of these. It's not a very onerous proposal, as I'll go through it. It's basically just a maximum of 1,000 words is the essential description that we're looking for, and so that's about 2 pages. So it's not a very onerous thing, but we would like for you to submit a notice of intent, just so that we know how many we are expecting. And the proposals then are due relatively soon, within the next couple of weeks, or a little bit longer than the next couple of weeks. So they're due on the 31st of March. Next slide. So telling you a little bit about the proposal opportunity. So here are some resources on this link. So this presentation, by the way, will be residing on our website, on the SCOPE website, and you can look up this link, but this is where we're going to put all of the information that you need to prepare a proposal, including a copy of this presentation, as well as a proposal template, and also some other resources that basically will be part of this presentation. So next slide. So the first part of the proposal, of course, is your cover sheet, and it's going to require, of course, your proposal title, your information, the information of the collaborating science activation team. So this is the key part here. You need to make contact with one team, or at least one team, and the PI of that team has to provide a letter of support saying that they're willing to work with you. And so basically that's one of the key things. If you need help connecting with one of the science activation teams, please feel free to reach out. Please do reach out early. And feel free to reach out to Jess Swan in particular. Her email address is here, as well as Chelsea Goldsmith, and her email address is provided here as well. And so basically the idea is for you to work collaboratively with one of the science activation teams to do something that you want to do. to excite learners of any demographic, really. And so it could be any project, and I'll have some examples of the kinds of projects that you can propose. And then, of course, so that's one of the key components is the collaboration with the science activation team. And then the other part is, and basically you have to provide any information on any other team members or collaborators that you are going to be working with to make happen your project. You don't have to have team members, but if you do have some team members, then that's the information that's going to be requested as well on the cover page. Next slide. And then, so this is where the meat of the proposal is. This is the technical description of the project. As I mentioned, this is going to be relatively short. It's a maximum of 1,000 words. We recommend that you keep it to maybe at least 500 words, because we need there to be some content, some meat to the proposal on exactly what you're going to be doing. In addition to sort of what you plan to do, the key parts of this technical description should include some justification for why you want to do what you want to do, some statement of the kind of anticipated impact that your project would have, and also a timeline for the completion of your project. So basically, I would recommend that you keep your narrative fairly high level and accessible to generally kind of a broad audience. And basically, this is going to be, as I said, a short statement. It's going to be at most about 2 pages. 1,000 words typically is about a couple of pages. Examples of the kinds of things that you can propose: it could be to develop some new educational materials. It could be to conduct a series of talks that you might give to particular types of audiences. It could be for some sort of technical consultation with a particular science activation team. So it could be any one of these types of things, or anything beyond that actually as well. So we're looking for any ideas that you might have to, and basically, if you look at the science activation page and look at what the teams do and see what are the kinds of things that you could contribute to those teams. And those are the kinds of ideas that we're looking for. So next slide. One part that we do need to get from you, of course, and that's the important one, is the budget and the budget justification. So the budget is basically just a table or a listing of things that you would need. The justification is a bulleted list of, so as I'm reading this, I think basically the budget is the table, and then the justification is a narrative explanation for each of those items in that bulletized list. And so, basically for every category, and I'll show you an example just now, for each category, you need to provide just a sentence or two of written explanation for what the expenses will be for. Before you submit, you should, definitely check the math, make sure everything adds up. One thing that I do want you to note is that there is not going to be any kind of overhead associated with this, because we are actually going to be making the funding directly available to you. This is not going to be to your institution. This is going to be, the funds are going to be awarded directly to you. The goal of that, of course, is to make sure that we're maximizing the impact of the funding that's available. So we want it to go to you to support what you want to do. So only direct costs are allowable. There's going to be no institutional overhead costs associated. Next slide. So here's sort of just an example, and the template also provides this, by the way. So, you might have travel costs, and so those are listed here at the very top. For example, lodging, registration, transportation. If it's something, if you're attending maybe a conference that's going to help you do something. Operational expenses might be things like software licenses or any other types of operations. Materials for what you might want to do. It could involve, just any kind of hardware that will be useful to you in your project. And so essentially, a total sort of listing, that's the budget. And then the budget narrative, which is basically just a statement then, which is an example of which is shown down at the bottom here. And again, this is information that's provided in the template. Next slide. So one of the things that we do need is in your proposal, odd letters of support. And this is just to demonstrate that, yes, you have been talking to the science activation team that is going to be working with you on this. So we definitely recommend that you get on that part of it, certainly very, as early as possible. And as I mentioned, Chelsea and Jess are here to help connect you if you have any issues or if you're hesitant to sort of, make a direct contact yourself. Basically, we need a letter from the PI of the science activation team that you're going to be working with. If you're a graduate student or a postdoc, we also need a brief letter from your supervisor or your employer that essentially says that you are a graduate student or postdoc at the institution. And then a letter of support basically from any other team member or collaborator that's working with you on that project. And again, that's not something that you are required to have. You may not have any team members, in which case you don't have to submit that. But if you do, then that's going to be required. So basically, again, templates for each of these letters are provided as well. So you can use exactly those templates, just put in the names and the titles and things like that that are asked for in those templates. Next, please. Is a biographical sketch, and this is typically just the sort of brief NASA format. And again, a template is provided for this. And so we need a biographical sketch for each team member who will receive funding if your project is selected. And this does not include, of course, a science activation collaborating team or their PI. We don't need that. And then basically you need to make sure that your team members are aware of this requirement. So please send them the template ahead of time so that they can fill that out. And by the way, I'm not monitoring chat actively here, Chelsea or Jess. If there's questions as we go along, maybe we want to answer those. So there's I see a question in the chat from Teresa. Is the letter from
Sure.
I'm sorry?
Can hop back one. Yep.
Yeah, so is the letter from the COI a letter of support or a letter of commitment? So basically, the letter from the COI or, well, COI, I want to say, so we use the word COI or collaborator or team member, it doesn't matter in this case. It's just, somebody who's going to be working with you on your proposal. And it's, again, the template for that letter is provided as part of the proposal information. And it's basically, it's just a letter of support, which shows that they are committed to doing what you said they're going to do in the project. So that's basically all that it is. So you can call it a letter of support, you can call it a letter of commitment. Either way, it's basically just recognizing that they are aware that you submitted the proposal, they know what their role is, and that they're going to do what you said you're going to do. So that's basically.
No, thank you for answering that. I was just trying to figure out the difference between like letter of support from a supervisor and letter of support from a COI.
Yes,
so
exactly.
They had the same name. So I was trying to figure out what the difference was.
Yeah, absolutely. And to help with that, we have the templates for that. So the verbiage is there. It's essentially just, we want to make sure that they are aware that you're submitting this proposal. So can a link to letter templates be provided in the chat? So Chelsea, I guess.
That is the bit.ly that just got put in the chat.
Okay, awesome. Madison says, if we're submitting this as a team of graduate students, do we need a letter from advisor for each person? Yes. So, I mean, basically, if it's a team of, say, 4 graduate students, then it would be good to get a letter for each of the graduate students who's involved there. So for the postdocs, and so that's a good question there, Madison, and we'll make sure to clarify that in the information that we have here, is that, for any graduate students or postdocs that are involved in your project, we do need a letter from the advisor stating that you are a postdoc or a grad student at their institution. Next slide. Yeah, we already talked about bio sketches, and then current and pending funding. So this is something that not everybody will have. So if it doesn't apply, if you don't have any active funds at the current time, and many early career folks probably do not, just say none. So put that information, current and pending support, and just say none or not applicable, and move on from there. But if you do have some funds, then we have again provided a template for that information. It's basically just the kind of NASA format that's typically asked for in a proposal. And so that's what we're looking for in this category. Next one. So the funding model and how is this going to work? So let's go on to that. So as I mentioned already, the grant funding is going to be directed to individuals, not to the institutions. So to do that, however, there are some logistical things that we have to be concerned with. It does mean that you have to be a US citizen or a permanent resident to be able to receive this funding, because those are some of the rules that ASU has in terms of being able to direct funding to individuals. You would be considered a supplier or contractor to ASU, and so that's how those funds are managed. And this would be considered taxable income by the submitter. So it's basically going to be provided directly to you as an individual to manage as part of your activities. So next slide. So all of the proposals that are submitted, so as I mentioned, the deadline for that is the 31st of March. And we essentially plan to have all of the reviews done in the next month after that. And so all notifications will be going out by the end of April. The awardees will be expected to attend a kickoff meeting, which will hopefully be sometime around mid-May, to set up an account and to discuss some of the reporting procedures. Essentially, once these accounts are set up, you'll receive 50% of the funds up front, and the remaining 50% will be dispersed at the end of the conclusion, or basically at the end of the year. And so, and then of course, I mean, you may submit a follow-on proposal for the following year if you want to get some continuation of your funding. But that'll be a separate proposal that you basically submit for continued funding in their project. So that's how we plan to disperse the funds. Next. And then just a few tips for the proposal. Definitely, read the directions carefully. There's a template that's provided. Use the template. As I mentioned, the key aspect of this is collaboration with a science activation team. So that is going to be key. If you don't do that, this is not going to qualify. And so I would strongly recommend that that's one of the first things that you try to do, is to make that connection and to establish kind of what you might be doing with a team that's going to make this funding possible. And as I mentioned, use the templates, ask what you need for to get the work done. So make sure that the scope of what you do and what you ask for is commensurate with the funding that you ask for. So, again, there's a range of funding pots that are available. As I mentioned, $5,000 to $20,000 per year. And so that sort of in some ways defines what might be possible, but definitely, make sure that it's reasonable what you ask for. Don't try to think that if it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be more fundable. I think that's one of the things that you need to make sure is that you can actually do the work. We want to see some exciting things result from this. So next slide. This is just actually for your information, the rubric that we're going to be using to evaluate the proposals. And again, you can go back to this. There's a lot of words on this, but the main point here is that we're looking for, how well the proposal actually addresses some of the goals of the science activation program. And I'll get to that in just a second, so you can actually see that as well. Whether the budget and the scope and the timeline make sense. And whether you are actually collaborating with the science activation team to really make that connection. So again, this information is going to be available to you. The rubric is going to be available. Make sure that your proposal, the technical description, addresses some of these aspects. And then maybe we can go on to I think it might be the last slide or the last bit one. So these are sort of the high level kind of goals of the science activation program. And so you can see they're pretty broad in terms of the top level objectives, mid-level objectives. We want to enable STEM education, improve US scientific literacy, national education goals, leveraging efforts through partnerships, and then you can see all these different things. So any kind of project that advances any of these goals, because these are the goals that the science activation teams are working towards anyway. And so any project that you can think of that's going to help to advance any of these types of goals. And also in your proposal, it would be a good thing to actually highlight one or two of these things and say, hey, you know, my project actually directly addresses one or two of these types of these mid-level objectives or the top level objectives. So next slide. I think this is basically it. We're at the end of the presentation. I'm here for a few more minutes, certainly, to answer any questions, and then Dave and Chelsea will be around as well for the next half an hour at least to answer any other questions that you might have.